The waves crashed against the yacht, loud and relentless in the stillness of night. Tessa Morgan's fingers clenched the cold steel railing, her knuckles nearly colorless. Her heart pounded in her chest as the ocean breeze hurled salty mist across her face, tangling her dark hair. But she didn't move. Her mind spun faster than the wind, struggling to comprehend what stood in front of her. "Ethan, please," she said, her voice trembling but trying not to break. She looked straight at her husband, her wide, pleading eyes searching for even a trace of the man she once loved. The man she thought would protect her, not destroy her. "This isn't who you are," she continued. "You don't have to go through with this." Ethan Whitaker stood stiffly, a few feet away. The moonlight made his sharp jawline seem even colder. His eyes were hard, distant, like she was just a stranger now. "Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be," he said sharply. "You always do this, Tess." Tessa's chest tightened as tears clouded her vision. "How?" she whispered. "How did we get to this point? I was always there for you. I believed in you. How did you turn into this?" Before Ethan could speak, another figure stepped into view, heels clicking loudly against the yacht's polished floor. Bianca Shaw leaned against Ethan, one hand sliding across his chest like she owned him. "Oh, Tessa," Bianca said with a smirk, her voice as sweet as sugar and twice as toxic. "Still clinging to that poor me act? It's exhausting." Tessa's eyes flashed between the two of them, her gut twisting. "You did this," she said bitterly. "You turned him against me." Bianca let out a quiet laugh. "Sweetheart, he came willingly. You made his life miserable. All I did was show him something better." "Enough," Tessa snapped, her voice cracking. "Just stop. Ethan, please, whatever she told you, it's not true. We can fix this. We can fix us." But Ethan just stared back, eyes empty. "It's too late, Tess," he said quietly. "You've always been so perfect, so out of reach. Do you have any idea what it's like to always feel like a backup character? In your own marriage." "You were never second to me," Tessa whispered. "Never." Ethan's voice grew louder, colder. "I can't do this anymore. Just let go." "No," she said, backing away. "I won't let you do this." Bianca stepped forward. "We'll finally be free," she hissed. "She's been holding you back." Tessa's mouth dropped open. Ethan's face shifted. Something dark flickered there, and before she could move, he grabbed her wrists. "Ethan, stop," she cried, panic exploding inside her. But he didn't stop. One finger at a time, he peeled her hands off the railing. And then he pushed. The sky tilted. The cold wind howled, and suddenly Tessa was falling. The ocean swallowed her like a monster. The icy water slammed into her like a wall, knocking the breath from her lungs. She kicked, her arms flailing, her soaked dress dragging her down. She fought her way up and broke the surface, gasping for air. "Ethan!" she screamed. "Help!" But the yacht was already drifting away. The roar of its engine drowned out her cries. On deck, Bianca turned to Ethan with a satisfied smile. "That wasn't so hard, was it?" Ethan didn't answer. He stared at the dark waves where Tessa had vanished. His hands trembled, but he said nothing. Bianca pressed her palm to his chest, forcing him to look at her. "Come on," she whispered. "It's done." The yacht disappeared into the night, leaving nothing but silence behind. In the water, Tessa's limbs burned as she fought to stay afloat. The waves hit her again and again, dragging her down. She could barely see the yacht now. Everything she'd known, gone. But then something stirred in her chest. A fire, a refusal. "They think I'm finished," she thought. "They think they won." They hadn't. She was still here, still breathing, and they didn't know that. Before we continue the story, if you're new here, please consider subscribing to our channel. It really helps us keep making stories like this. Tessa Morgan didn't come from privilege. She'd built her life from scratch. Hard work, not handouts. She grew up in a small Minnesota town, the kind where ambition was laughed at. Her mother, Ruth, had been her hero, a humble seamstress with hands that could turn old fabric into beauty. Tessa could still picture her, hunched over a sewing machine late at night, stitching with precision, Put your heart into it, and the world will notice, her mother used to say. After Ruth passed, Tessa carried her sewing kit everywhere. It became the seed for her fashion brand. She started with nothing, just a website and a few handmade dresses. Her friends modeled them in parks and cafes. One order turned into 10, then 100. Eventually, a San Diego boutique took a chance on her line. From there, Tessa's label exploded. Her collections lit up runways. Celebrities wore her designs. She opened flagship stores in New York and LA. But she never forgot her roots. That old sewing kit still sat in her office drawer, a quiet reminder of where it all began. People admired her, not just for her talent, but for her grace. She treated her team like family, shook every client's hand, and smiled even on her worst days. Yet behind the spotlight, her marriage to Ethan had started to fray. Ethan hadn't always been like this. When they met in downtown San Diego, he was confident, magnetic, full of ideas about launching his own startup. Tessa had been drawn to that spark, the way he talked about wanting to change the world. They spent nights dreaming big, two ambitious souls building something together. Or so she thought. In the early days, they were a team. Tessa supported every one of his ventures, even the ones that never made it past a logo and a website. She believed in him. Even when the tech firm folded, even when the marketing agency tanked, even when his friend's restaurant project swallowed half their savings, she told him it was okay. They'd bounce back. And they did. At least she did. Because while Ethan's dreams collapsed, Tessa's were taking off. Her brand, Tessa Morgan Studio, was making waves. Magazine features, celebrity shout-outs, fashion weeks. Her designs were everywhere. And slowly, something changed. Ethan started retreating. He stopped asking how her day went. He no longer joined her at launch parties. When people congratulated him on Tessa's success, he barely smiled. "You've built an empire," she told him one night, hoping to encourage him. "And you helped build mine." "Yeah," he muttered, eyes on his phone. "Good for you." It stung, but she let it go. Everyone has bad days, right? Bad days turned into bad months. Ethan started working later, but there were no projects, no income, just vague mentions of consulting gigs and networking events. Tessa pretended not to notice. She bought him gifts, planned little getaways, but nothing worked. He grew colder, sharper. When friends asked, she defended him. "He's under pressure," she'd say with a forced smile. "He just needs time." But deep down, she was afraid. Then came Bianca Shaw. Bianca had joined Tessa Morgan Studio as a junior designer, bright, stylish, and overly ambitious. Tessa had seen potential in her, mentored her, even called her a younger version of me. But there had always been something about Bianca, an edge, a hunger. That hunger turned toxic. When Tessa caught Bianca passing off her designs as her own during a private client pitch, she was heartbroken. But instead of dragging her through a public scandal, she quietly fired her. No social media call-out, no legal drama, just dignity. Bianca hadn't taken it well. "She thinks she's untouchable," Bianca had hissed to a coworker days later. "But no one stays on top forever." At the time, Tessa brushed it off. A bitter intern, nothing more. But she had underestimated Bianca's spite and Ethan's growing bitterness. Bianca slithered her way back into Ethan's life. It started with a chance meeting at a networking mixer. Bianca, ever so smooth, acted surprised to see him. "Ethan, wow, look at you. Still married to the queen of fashion?" Her voice was warm, almost too warm. Ethan, feeling like a faded shadow beside his famous wife, soaked up the attention. Over the next few weeks, they met, just for drinks, just to talk, until Ethan was seeing more of Bianca than Tessa. And Bianca? She knew exactly what she was doing. "You've always had dreams, Ethan," she whispered across a candle-lit table. "She doesn't see you anymore, but I do." She fed his insecurities like sugar-coated poison, made it seem like she was the only one who truly understood him. It wasn't long before Ethan started saying things like, "I feel like I'm just a prop in her brand," or, "She never asks what I want." Bianca never openly trashed Tessa. At first, Instead, she played the victim on his behalf. "It's not fair, Ethan," she'd sigh. "You gave up so much for her, and she doesn't even notice." At first, Ethan pushed back. "She's been good to me." "But is she good for you?" Bianca asked. That was the moment it all shifted. What began as quiet resentment turned into silent rage. Bianca planted the idea, and Ethan watered it every day. "She's holding you back," Bianca whispered one night. "You deserve better. Freedom. Peace. Someone who sees you." Ethan wasn't ready to hear the next part. Not yet, but Bianca said it anyway. "You don't need her around anymore." He blinked at her. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying—" Bianca leaned closer, her voice like silk over a knife. "There are ways. To start over, quiet ways." "Stop," Ethan muttered, shaking his head. But he didn't walk away. Bianca kept pressing. "Accidents happen, Ethan. She's busy, distracted. A mistake on the stairs. A cup of bad coffee. She wouldn't see it coming." "I'm not a killer," Ethan snapped. "Who said anything about killing?" Bianca replied with a shrug. "You're just reclaiming your life." The next few weeks were a blur of whispered plans, half-hearted attempts, and aborted schemes. But the deeper Ethan sank into Bianca's spell, the more his lines blurred. He began to think, maybe he could do it. Maybe life would be better without Tessa. One morning, as sunlight poured into their open-concept kitchen, Grace, the longtime housekeeper, walked in carrying fresh fruit. She greeted them as always, cheerful but sharp-eyed. Grace had been with Tessa for nearly a decade. She saw everything, even the things no one said aloud. That morning, she watched Ethan stir Tessa's coffee a little too precisely. His hand trembled, slightly. His eyes flicked toward the mug and then away. Grace's instincts flared like alarms. When Tessa reached for the cup, Grace gently placed a plate between her and the mug. "Miss Tessa," she said with a smile. "Landscapers blocked the driveway again. Might be best to take the Jeep." Tessa blinked. "I wasn't planning on going out, but—" "Okay?" Grace nodded, casually scooping up the mug. "Let me freshen." "This for you," she said, walking it to the sink. She dumped the contents, heart pounding, and brewed a new cup with her own hands. Something was off. Very off. Later that afternoon, Ethan met Bianca in the parking garage near his office. She leaned against her car, arms folded. "Well?" she asked. "She didn't drink it," Ethan said, running a hand through his hair. Grace switched the mugs. "She's always there," Bianca's eyes narrowed. "That nosy woman, will have to find another way." And they did. A week later, Bianca sat in Tessa's driveway, sunglasses on and a grin playing at her lips. Air was thick with quiet tension. Ethan emerged from the garage, wiping his hands on a rag, his face pale. "It's done," he muttered, glancing around nervously. "The brakes are gone. She'll never know." Bianca's eyes sparkled. "Perfect. One bump on the road and no more problem." Inside the kitchen, Grace was already watching through the window. Her sharp instincts hadn't stopped nagging her for days. Every interaction between Ethan and Bianca, every whisper behind closed doors only confirmed what she feared. Something horrible was coming. She wasn't just a housekeeper anymore. She was the only thing standing between Tessa and disaster. Later that evening, Tessa came downstairs, her keys in hand. Grace intercepted her with practiced ease. "Ma'am," Grace said calmly, "I was thinking. The SUV's better suited for the roadwork near the East End. The sedan's a bit jerky right now." Tessa blinked. "I was going to take the car, but sure, that works." Grace nodded and smiled, but her grip on the SUV keys tightened. She wasn't going to let Ethan's plan succeed. Over the next few days, Grace quietly began collecting more than just suspicions. She documented phone calls, conversations. She placed a small recorder under the kitchen counter. One night, while Ethan and Bianca whispered in the pantry, Grace captured every word. "She's too trusting," Bianca said coldly. "Sooner or later, she'll let her guard down." "Yeah," Ethan replied. "And when she does, that's—" Grace's heart pounded as she listened back later that night. This wasn't just betrayal. It was attempted murder. She needed proof, and now she had it. She didn't confront them, not yet. She knew it had to be handled carefully, with evidence, with backup. But the next twist would come faster than anyone expected. Ethan suddenly became affectionate again. He started smiling more. Bringing Tessa breakfast, complimenting her outfits. It was a shift so drastic it almost made her uncomfortable. After months of cold silence, now he wanted to talk. He brought up memories, old vacations, the day they bought the yacht. "We should take it out again," he suggested over dinner one night, swirling wine in his glass. Tessa raised an eyebrow. "Now? We haven't used it in over a year." "That's exactly why we should," Ethan said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "Let's reconnect. One night, just the two of us." Tessa hesitated. Her instincts whispered something wasn't right, but the hopeful look in his eyes softened her suspicion. Maybe he really wanted to fix things. Maybe this was a turning point. "Okay," she finally said. "Let's go." The yacht sat in the marina, gleaming under the fading sunset. The sky turned hues of gold and lavender as the couple boarded. Ethan had already prepared everything. Wine, candles. Her favorite music played softly from hidden speakers. It was picturesque, almost too perfect. "You've outdone yourself," Tessa said, a hesitant smile tugging at her lips. Ethan smiled back, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Just wanted you to feel special." They sat down for dinner. The food was good. Too good. Her favorite dish cooked exactly the way she liked. It should have felt romantic, but it didn't. Tessa kept glancing toward the lower deck. Something tugged at her attention. A soft sound, a faint click, a whisper. "I'm just going to freshen up," she said, standing. "Need help?" Ethan asked too quickly. "Nope," she replied, already walking away. As she neared the lower cabin, she heard voices. Two of them. "She doesn't suspect a thing," Bianca whispered. "She better not," Ethan replied, his tone rigid. Tessa's pulse pounded. She leaned closer to the door, just enough to see through the crack. Bianca stood inches from Ethan, dressed in a sleek black outfit. She looked completely out of place, like this wasn't her first time aboard. "She's out of the way tonight," Bianca said. "After this, we're free." Ethan ran a hand down his face. "Let's just get it over with." Tessa's stomach dropped. Her breath caught in her throat. She stepped back silently, trying not to collapse under the weight of realization. She had no phone, no weapon, no ally, and they were going to kill her tonight. When she stepped back onto the deck moments later, her face was calm, but her hands trembled. She picked up her wine glass, forcing a casual smile. "Everything okay?" Ethan asked, stepping out of the cabin. "Just fine," she lied. Bianca followed behind, her presence now out in the open. "Oh, I've been helping plan the night," Bianca said sweetly. "Wanted everything to be perfect." Tessa's expression darkened. "Perfect, really?" Ethan's mask dropped. "You always figure it out eventually, Tess." "You're insane," she said, backing up. "Both of you." Ethan lunged forward, grabbing her wrist. "Stop fighting this." Bianca stepped in, her tone venomous. "You always thought you were better than everyone. Guess what? Tonight, you're not." Tessa jerked her arm free and stumbled backward toward the edge. "You won't get away with this," she cried. "Oh," Bianca sneered. "We already have." Ethan didn't hesitate. He shoved her. Tessa screamed, once, before. The freezing ocean swallowed her whole. She hit the water hard, the chill slamming into her bones. Her clothes dragged her down and the waves battered her like fists. She fought her way up, gasping, choking, screaming. But the yacht was gone. No lights, no engine, no sign of help, only darkness and sea. But she wasn't done. "I won't die like this," she thought. "Not tonight." A jagged rock jutted out nearby, a piece of salvation. With everything she had left, she swam for it. Her arms burned, her chest ached, but she reached it. Clinging to the rock, she coughed violently, her whole body trembling. Her teeth chattered as the cold wind lashed her skin. For hours she lay there, waiting. watching, breathing. Then, lights. A boat. She waved, screamed, kicked. "Help! Over here!" The boat slowed. A spotlight scanned the water, and then it found. Her strong hands pulled her onto the deck. She collapsed into a pile of soaked clothes and broken breath. "You're safe now," the fisherman said, his voice rough but kind. "What the hell happened?" Tessa looked up, barely able to speak. "Husband," she whispered, "and his mistress. They tried to kill me." The man's face hardened. "You're not going back to them," he said. "You're coming with me." The hours after her rescue blurred into a haze. The fisherman, whose name was Raymond Cole, took Tessa to a small harbor town 30 miles from the marina. It was quiet, remote, the kind of place where people didn't ask too many questions. She was wrapped in every towel and blanket he had, her skin raw from the salt and wind, but her mind was crystal clear. She was alive. And Ethan didn't know it. Raymond didn't push her for details. He just offered her space, food, and silence. In the small motel room he helped arrange, Tessa finally slept for more than 20 minutes, for the first time in days. The next morning, she sat in bed sipping weak coffee, wrapped in a hoodie and fleece pants Raymond had picked up from a nearby thrift store. Her hands trembled as she opened her laptop. She didn't dare log into her business accounts yet. No news, no emails. Not yet. She wasn't ready, but she needed answers. She needed support. That afternoon, she called the only person she could trust without hesitation: Grace. "Tessa?" Grace answered, her voice cracking. Tessa's throat tightened. "It's me," she whispered. "I'm okay." There was a beat of stunned silence before Grace gasped. "Oh my God. Oh my God, I thought everyone thinks you're—" "I know," Tessa cut in softly. "And that's how I need it to stay, for now." A few hours later, Grace arrived at the motel, eyes red and jaw clenched. She hugged Tessa so tightly that it hurt, but Tessa didn't let go. Not for a long time. "I knew something was wrong," Grace said, pacing the small room. "I saw the way he looked at you, the way she crept around. I recorded them, everything. The poisoned coffee, the tampered brakes, the yacht conversation. All of it." Tessa's breath caught. "You have proof?" "I do." Grace pulled a small flash drive from her coat pocket and placed it in Tessa's hand. "Everything you need to expose them." Tessa stared at the drive like it was gold. It might as well have been. "Grace," she said, her voice shaking. "You didn't have to." "I couldn't let them destroy you," Grace interrupted. "You gave me a life, a family. I wasn't about to stand by while they tried to take yours." Tessa's eyes filled with tears. She wiped them away quickly. "We're going to bring them down," she said, voice steadier now. "Not just for what they did to me, but for what they are." That night she called a private investigator Grace had once worked with on a separate matter, Jack Stanton. Older, sharp, and quiet, Jack didn't waste time. "You've got something to work with?" he asked on the phone. "I've got recordings, receipts, and names," Tessa said. "I just don't know how to prove financial theft." "I'll, handle that part," Jack replied. "Just sit tight." For 3 days, Tessa waited in that motel while Jack did what he did best: dig. He called her on the 4th day. "We've got it," he said flatly. "What?" "They've been draining money from your regional retail accounts, moving it into an offshore account set up by Bianca. Ethan's been laundering through one of your pop-up stores. It's sloppy, but enough to get them both arrested." Tessa's heart pounded. "How do we nail them?" "There's one more piece," Jack said. "I've tracked down a guy named Derek Haas, former associate of Bianca's. Bit of a fixer. He says he has a video of them plotting, but he won't hand it over without a price." "How much?" Tessa asked, already knowing what was coming. 70 grand, cash. Tessa closed her eyes. That money could have helped pay bonuses for her staff, could have helped expand the spring line. But this was justice. "Pay him," she said, "whatever it takes." That same evening, Tessa and Jack met Derek in a diner 2 towns over. He was younger than expected, maybe mid-30s, wearing a leather jacket and chewing gum like he had no care in the world. But his eyes, cold, calculating, told a different story. "You the lady everyone thinks is dead?" Derek asked, sliding into the booth across from them. Tessa didn't flinch. "You have what I need?" He reached into his coat and pulled out a flash drive, placing it on the table. "Everything's there. Video, voice memos, and a message thread where Ethan says, and I quote, 'We finish her, we start fresh.'" Tessa stared at the drive, her chest tightening. Jack pulled out an envelope of cash. Derek snatched it up, counted it without shame, then stood. "Good luck," he said, walking out. Tessa slid the flash drive into her laptop back at the motel. Her hands shook as the first video loaded. There they were, Ethan and Bianca, sitting. The back seat of a car, laughing. "She'll never see it coming," Bianca said on camera. "She's too busy playing queen to notice the trap." "She'll be gone soon," Ethan added, "and we'll be free." Tessa closed the laptop. This was it. It wasn't just attempted murder. It was premeditated, documented, cold. They were going down. The decision came quickly. Tessa couldn't wait any longer. It was time to return, publicly, and end this. With Jack's help, she arranged a board meeting at T. Morgan Studio under the pretense of urgent leadership concerns. The email went out late at night. No one outside her inner circle knew she was alive. That was the plan. The next morning, the company's conference room buzzed with uneasy whispers. Executives, investors, PR managers. No one knew what to expect. Ethan walked in wearing a navy blazer and a calm, calculated smile. Bianca followed closely, dressed in bold red. She smirked at the room, enjoying the power shift. They had already begun telling people that Tessa was abroad, taking time off, considering stepping down. But then the door opened, and time stopped. Tessa Morgan walked in, calm and alive. Gasps rippled across the room. Chairs creaked as people rose to their feet. Ethan's jaw dropped. Bianca gripped the edge of the table so hard her knuckles turned white. "She's dead," Bianca muttered under her breath. "No, she's not," Ethan said, his voice barely audible. Tessa walked to the head of the table, chin high, eyes cold. "Good morning," she said smoothly. "I know this meeting was called unexpectedly, but trust me, it's long overdue." The room fell into stunned silence. Tessa clicked a small remote in her hand. Behind her, the projection screen lit up with a paused video frame. "Some of you may be wondering why I disappeared," she continued. "Today you'll understand." She hit play. The audio was clear. Ethan and Bianca's voices filled the room. Jaws dropped. Some people gasped. One woman at the back clapped a hand over her mouth. "She'll never see it coming. She's too blind to know she's in danger." "After this, we're free." Tessa let the video play in full. Then she brought up screenshots of bank transfers, side-by-side images of falsified documents, text messages from Ethan's phone, recordings Grace had captured. "This wasn't just betrayal," Tessa said, turning toward the stunned audience. "This was attempted murder and company theft, both of which I can now prove." Bianca shot to her feet. "This is slander." "It's evidence," Tessa replied. "You don't know what you're talking about," Ethan shouted, panic rising in his voice. "You're twisting things." Tessa raised a hand. "I let you speak for years. Now it's my turn." Ethan froze. Tessa turned to the board members. "This company was built on trust, transparency, and grit. I've never asked for perfection. I've asked for integrity. The people sitting next to you have violated every one of those principles. They tried to erase me, to take what I built." And then, another interruption. The door opened again. 2 uniformed officers entered the room, followed by Detective Maya Perez, Ethan Whitaker. "Bianca Shaw," she announced. "You're both under arrest. Charges include conspiracy to commit murder, corporate embezzlement, and attempted homicide." Ethan stumbled back. "Wait, no, you don't understand. This is a setup." Perez didn't flinch. "We've heard the recordings. We have the financial records. The only setup is the one you two tried to orchestrate." Bianca's voice turned shrill. "You can't do this." "Oh, we can," the detective replied, producing handcuffs. Ethan turned toward Tessa one last time. "You'll regret this," she looked him in the eye, calm and steady. "I already did." The officers escorted them out. Whispers filled the room. Shock, disbelief. Applause even started in the back. Tessa stood silently for a moment, absorbing it all. When the door finally shut behind Ethan and Bianca, she turned back to the table. "This company is more than just a brand. It's a promise," she said. "And I'm here to make sure that promise lives on." Applause erupted. Some people stood, others cried. Grace, standing quietly in the back, smiled. Tessa met her eyes and nodded. Later that day, Tessa sat quietly in her office for the first time in months. She stared out the window as the city moved like nothing had happened. But everything had changed. She thought about the night on the yacht, the taste of salt in her mouth, the silence as the boat disappeared. And now she was back. She'd done what few ever get to do, survive the betrayal and still stand tall. The next morning, headlines exploded. Fashion icon Tessa Morgan alive. Husband and mistress arrested in murder plot. T. Morgan studio founder survives attempted murder, brings down betrayers. Her face was everywhere again, but now with a different kind of power. That evening she walked into her new home, a minimalist seaside loft with big windows and soft light. Grace was in the kitchen brewing tea. "You did it," Grace said simply, handing her a cup. Tessa smiled. "We did." They sat in silence for a few minutes, letting it all sink in. "What's next?" Grace finally asked. Tessa took a sip of tea, then looked out toward the dark ocean. "I start over," she said, "but this time on my terms." In the weeks that followed the arrests, Tessa's world gradually shifted from chaos to calm. The media frenzy eventually died down, and her team, though shaken, rallied around her. With every passing day, she felt lighter, not because things were suddenly perfect, but because she had taken her power back. She moved forward step by step, rebuilding not just the company, but herself. Her new home, perched quietly on a bluff near the coast, became her sanctuary. Floor-to-ceiling windows flooded the space with sunlight. At night, the sound of waves crashing outside was no longer a trigger. It was a comfort. Some mornings she would sit with her sketchpad barefoot, hair in a bun, sipping her tea while the world remained still. The designs she drew now weren't just fashion. They were armor, expressions of survival. She didn't need revenge anymore. She had something stronger: freedom. Grace remained by her side like a shadow with purpose. What started as a job had become an unbreakable bond. They shared meals, laughed, sometimes cried. Grace had seen her at her most vulnerable, and never once looked away. One evening, as they folded laundry together, Grace said softly, "You know, I keep thinking about that first day I came to work for you. You were wearing two different socks and burning eggs?" Tessa laughed. "I was trying to do everything by myself." "And you still are," Grace said gently. "But you don't have to." Tessa looked at her, eyes soft. "I know, I'm finally learning that." Meanwhile, the legal case against Ethan and Bianca moved swiftly. The evidence was airtight. Dozens of voice memos, bank records, video footage. Even Ethan's own mother had come forward after learning the truth, offering a written statement in Tessa's defense. "I raised my son better than this," she'd written, "but I cannot protect him from consequences." As for Bianca, her smugness evaporated in court. Her lawyers tried every tactic, blame shifting, victim playing, but it didn't work. The jury saw through it. They saw the cruelty, the manipulation, the ambition without conscience. At sentencing, both were given 25 years with no parole. Attempted murder, fraud, conspiracy. The list went on. Tessa didn't attend every hearing, but she did show up for the final one. She sat in the second row, composed in a navy blazer, her presence quiet, but unshakable. When the judge asked if the victim would like to speak, she stood, walked to the front, and faced the courtroom. "I built a life around trust," she said. and 2 people I once cared for tried to destroy it. They took my love and used it as a weapon, but what they didn't realize was, I am not defined by what they tried to take. I am defined by what I survived. Ethan wouldn't meet her eyes. Bianca tried to look defiant, but her mask cracked. Tessa finished her statement with 6 calm, devastating words. I hope prison gives you time. She returned to her seat, back straight, voice steady. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Flashes, microphones, questions. Tessa, what's next for you? She smiled. I'm going home. That night she stood on her balcony, the ocean stretching into the distance, moonlight silvering the waves. She lit a small candle and placed it by the edge. It wasn't for revenge. It was for closure. She whispered, "Goodbye," into the wind. In the months that followed, Tessa didn't just reclaim her company. She reinvented it. She started a new initiative under T. Morgan Studio, the Second Stitch program, a mentorship platform for women leaving abusive relationships or recovering from betrayal. Grace helped run it. Survivors found purpose there, learning sewing, design, financial independence. It became the most meaningful line she'd ever launched. One of the women, a single mother named Camille, hugged Tessa after her first runway show and said, "You gave me more than a job. You gave me my voice back." That meant more than any fashion award ever could. At an industry event later that year, a journalist asked, "Tessa, do you think this experience made you stronger?" Tessa paused before answering. "It reminded me of who I already was. That strength was never gone. It was buried, under love that wasn't real and loyalty that wasn't returned. But I dug it out, and now it's mine." She still had moments, late nights where she replayed what had happened. Times where the fear crept back in, but she faced those moments head on, no longer running from them. One morning, while sorting fabric samples in her office, she found a small photo tucked in an old notebook. It was of her and Ethan back in their early days. They were smiling, arms wrapped around each other, unaware of the future. She stared at it for a long time. Then, without ceremony, she dropped it into the shredder. Grace peeked in. "You ready for the next meeting?" Tessa stood, brushing hair from her face. "Yeah, let's go build something better." The 2 women walked down the hallway together, side by side. Outside, the world kept moving. But inside Tessa Morgan's world, everything had finally come into focus. The 1-year mark came quietly. No fanfare, no headlines, just Tessa, sitting at her favorite cafe by the harbor, watching boats glide across the water like nothing had ever gone wrong. A soft breeze stirred her coffee, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she felt peace. Not a mask, not a performance, just real, rooted peace. She flipped through her sketchbook, pages filled with bold lines and vibrant shapes. These new designs felt different, raw, brave. They weren't about trends anymore, they were about truth. Across the table, Grace set down her own coffee with a satisfied sigh. "You know, this might be the first time I've seen you breathe." Tessa smiled, glancing at the horizon. "It's the first time I've let myself." Grace reached into her bag and pulled out a small, gift-wrapped box. "Happy Survival Day," she said softly. Tessa's eyebrows lifted. "Survival Day? You didn't just survive, Tessa. You conquered," Grace replied. Inside the box was a custom-made bracelet, a simple charm, a sewing needle crossed with a tiny lightning bolt. Tessa's throat tightened. "It's perfect." Back at T. Morgan Studio, things were changing. The company had grown, sure, but not in the way most people expected. Instead of expanding internationally, Tessa focused inward. She raised wages, implemented mental health programs, made space for creative risk-taking. The team felt it. They weren't just employees. They were survivors, dreamers, fighters. One intern, a college dropout named Nadia, approached Tessa after presenting her first design collection and said through years, "I thought I didn't belong in this world, but you made space for people like me." Moments like that made everything worth it. The press kept circling. Documentaries were proposed. Podcasts reached out. A biopic was pitched. Tessa said no to most of it. "I don't want to be remembered for what they did to me," she told Grace one night. "I want to be remembered for what I built after." But there was one request she didn't turn down. An invitation to speak at a leadership summit in San Francisco, back where it all began. It felt symbolic, almost poetic. She hadn't returned to that city since the betrayal. The auditorium was packed. Young entrepreneurs, investors, journalists, all waiting to hear the woman who had risen from a yacht deck in the middle of the ocean and built an empire from brokenness. When she walked on stage, the applause was thunderous. But Tessa didn't smile right away. She looked out at the crowd, at all the hopeful faces staring back at her, and took a moment. Then she spoke. "I used to think strength was about holding everything together, keeping quiet, enduring. But I've learned that real strength is walking away from what breaks you, even if it's something you once loved." The room fell silent. No typing, no coughs, just listening. I was betrayed by the person I trusted most. Not just cheated on, planned against, almost killed. And it would have been easy to become bitter, to turn cold. But I didn't want to lose myself just because they did. She paused, letting the truth breathe. I came back not to get revenge, but to rebuild. And what I found was, resilience isn't something you're born with. It's something you uncover in the rubble. The standing ovation didn't come right away. It came after the silence. And that made it more powerful. That evening, back at her hotel, Tessa stood on the rooftop terrace, the skyline glowing behind her. She felt the weight of the past 12 months settle behind her like a closed chapter, but not erased, just complete. She thought of Ethan and Bianca sometimes. Not with rage, not with regret, just distance. They were a chapter. She was the whole book. Weeks later, Tessa returned home to a letter waiting at her door. No return address. Inside was a short note written, in rushed handwriting. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect you to read this. But I need you to know. Watching you rise after what we did, it changed me. I don't deserve peace, but I hope you've found yours. E.W." Tessa folded the note and tucked it away in the drawer where she kept her mother's sewing kit. Not because she wanted to remember him, but because that letter marked something. Closure. One Sunday morning, while walking through the garden, Grace caught up with her, a smile playing at her lips. "You've changed," she said. "Good or bad?" "Beautifully," Tessa chuckled, brushing a petal off her sleeve. "I don't feel fearless, you know, just free." "You don't need to be fearless to be unstoppable," Grace said. "You just need to keep walking." And so she did. At the next board meeting, Tessa announced a new expansion, not to fashion capitals, but to domestic shelters and women's re-entry programs. T. Morgan Studio would open creative labs across the country, places where women could rediscover themselves through design. One investor raised an eyebrow. "Is there a profit model?" "There's a purpose model," Tessa said, without missing a beat. No one questioned her again. The day her story came full circle wasn't loud or dramatic. It was a quiet moment. In the middle of a community sewing class, Tessa stood beside a woman stitching a patch onto a torn dress. "My hands are shaky," the woman said. "I haven't sewn in years." Tessa smiled and gently guided her fingers. "So were mine. You'll find your rhythm." And as they worked together, surrounded by laughter and shared resilience, Tessa knew she hadn't just survived betrayal, she had turned it into beauty. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel and let us know your favorite moment in the comments.